Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize later they were smiling at your pain the whole time? That's what happened to me. My best friend, the person I thought would always have my back, chose to date my ex, not because she loved him. Not because they had some secret connection. But because she knew it would shatter me. At first, I couldn't believe it. We'd shared secrets, late-night talks, dreams about our futures. I told her everything about my relationship, from the sweet gestures to the ugly fights. She knew how much he broke me, how hard it was for me to walk away. So when she appeared with him on her arm, smiling like nothing was wrong, I felt a kind of betrayal that burned deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. You'd think your best friend would protect you from more pain, right? Instead, she walked straight into my scars and twisted the knife. I remember staring at them, my chest tight, wondering, was this all planned? Did she wait until I was vulnerable just to make her move? And here's where it gets worse. The more I tried to ignore it, the more obvious it became that she wasn't just dating him casually. She flaunted it. She wanted me to see. She wanted me to hurt. Why would someone who claimed to love me as a sister do something so cruel? What kind of friendship was this? If behind the laughter and promises, she was secretly sharpening daggers for my back, I know some of you watching have gone through betrayals too. Maybe it wasn't your best friend. Maybe it was a sibling, a partner, or someone you trusted with your whole heart. But tell me, what would you do if the person who knew your deepest wounds was the same person pressing salt into them? This story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about secrets, jealousy, and a truth that shocked me more than I thought possible. Because as I dug deeper into why she did it, I discovered something so twisted it still keeps me up at night. If you want to see how this shocking story ends, don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, the ending will leave you questioning every friendship you've ever had. I kept replaying it in my head, over and over. The image of her hand slipping into his like it was the most natural thing in the world. My so-called best friend, holding the very person who once held me. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I wanted answers. Why him? Why this way? So one night, I confronted her. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just asked, why would you do this to me? And you know what she did? She laughed. She looked me straight in the eye and said, maybe it's time you learned you don't own everyone you date. Her words hit like poison. Cold, dismissive, almost rehearsed. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about connection. She wanted me to feel small. That's when I realized this wasn't just a slip of judgment, this was deliberate. I kept asking myself, had she been waiting for this? Back when I vented to her about my ex, did she secretly enjoy it? Was she listening to my pain, not with sympathy, but with opportunity? The thought made my stomach turn. And here's the worst part, I couldn't even talk to anyone else about it. People always say exes are fair game. But this wasn't about fair game. This was about betrayal dressed up as friendship. About a person who promised to protect me choosing instead to wound me where it hurt the most. Have you ever felt trapped like that? When speaking up makes you sound bitter, but staying silent makes you feel weak? That's where I was. Caught between my pride and my breaking heart. Still, something inside me whispered that this wasn't the full story. Her sudden cruelty, the smug smile, the way she flaunted him, it felt too intentional, too sharp, like she wanted me to break. But why? What was her end game? I didn't have the answer then. But soon, a secret would come to light that proved she wasn't just reckless, she was calculated. And once I found out, I could never look at her the same again. The secret finally started to unravel one afternoon when I bumped into an old mutual friend. She didn't know the whole story, but she dropped a detail that froze me in place. She said, "Oh, your best friend mentioned she always thought your ex was cute, even when you two were still together." I stood there, my heart pounding. Wait, what? So while I was pouring my heart out to her, crying over fights, celebrating little milestones, venting about his flaws, she was silently judging, maybe even plotting. That wasn't just betrayal. That was premeditated. Suddenly, so many past moments replayed in my head with new, darker meaning. The times she would ask, "So, how serious are you guys?" Or when she casually said, "Don't you think he flirts a lot?" Back then, I brushed it off as harmless chatter. But now? Now it sounded like a strategy. The realization made my blood run cold. Had she been waiting for us to fall apart? Or worse, did she want us to fall apart so she could swoop in? The thought made my chest tighten. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her, her envy, her twisted need to outshine me. But here's the thing, I couldn't confront her yet. Not without proof. If I stormed in with accusations, she'd just laugh in my face again, make me look crazy. So, I stayed quiet. I smiled when I saw them in public, but inside I was unraveling. And I couldn't stop asking myself, why me? Of all the people she could date, why choose the one person she knew would cut me the deepest? Was I just entertainment to her? A competition she couldn't stand to lose? Here's where it got even worse, people around us started whispering. She upgraded, maybe he just clicked better with her. They didn't know the history, the betrayal beneath the surface. And each careless comment felt like another knife to my back. Have you ever been in a room full of people and felt completely alone? That's where I was. Pretending to be okay while everyone else speculated, judged, or, worse, rooted for them. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. Their relationship wasn't built on love. It was built on spite, and I could feel in my gut that eventually, cracks would start to show. And when those cracks appeared, what spilled out would shock me more than I ever imagined. It didn't take long to notice Ryan's darker side. At first, it was subtle, tiny comments, half-jokes, a look that made Hannah flinch. But soon, the little things became impossible to ignore. He monitored her messages, corrected her tone in group chats, and made jokes that weren't funny. They were sharp, precise, like knives disguised as laughter. Hannah tried to laugh along at first, brushing it off. "He's just protective," she'd say, trying to convince herself. But I could see it. Every time she hesitated to text me, I saw the fear in her eyes. Every time she didn't share a detail, I could feel her shrinking, folding herself smaller to avoid his scrutiny. I tried warning her. I told her she deserved freedom, space, respect. But it was like speaking to a wall. She wanted to believe his charm outweighed the control. And maybe she even loved him, at least the version of him he showed her. Then the small warning signs escalated. He got angry over innocent things, a coffee date with a friend, a meme she didn't immediately respond to, even a text from me. Each time, he'd twist it into a lecture, a warning, a punishment disguised as care. It made me furious. But also helpless. How do you save someone who doesn't realize they're being trapped? How do you show them a cage when they think it's a mansion? The tension hit a peak one night when Hannah called me, her voice shaking. "Emily, he's gone too far this time." My heart froze. She explained he'd smashed her phone against the wall. The words barely registered. And I could feel panic crawling up my spine. This wasn't just control anymore, it was danger. And then, before I could even respond, I heard it, a loud knock, heavy and urgent. Someone pounding on her window. The kind of knock that makes your stomach drop, the kind that makes you freeze in place. Her camera jolted in my hand. Ryan's voice, sharp and furious, carried through the silence. She dropped her phone, the screen going black. I was left staring at my wall, my chest pounding. Do I call the cops? Do I drive across the city and risk walking straight into his rage? Or do I let her try to handle it on her own, knowing I might never forgive myself if I do nothing? What would you do in my place? Would you risk everything to help someone who refuses to see the danger, or step back to protect yourself? The next morning, rumors had already started swirling about what happened at the bar the night before. Everyone saw Ryan lose control. Everyone except Hannah seemed to think she had done something to provoke him. And everyone except me thought I couldn't see the pattern. It was becoming impossible to ignore the truth. Ryan wasn't just controlling. He was a storm. And Hannah was stuck in the middle, too scared to escape. Then came the night that changed everything. Hannah called me in a panic, her voice trembling so much I could barely understand her. "Emily, he's accusing me." Everyone saw. "He's telling them I cheated." "I didn't." I swear, my stomach dropped. This was beyond jealousy or control. This was manipulation, a full-blown public smear. I rushed to her apartment, heart hammering. When I arrived, she was pacing, hands clutched tightly around her phone, mascara running down her cheeks. "He said it's all your fault," she whispered. "He told everyone that you're the one poisoning me against him." I froze. That line, "my fault," stung sharper than I expected. Of course, she didn't know the half of it, but Ryan had learned how to twist the truth, and he was good at it. Too good. I sat her down, trying to calm her shaking hands. "Hannah, listen to me," I said. "None of this is your fault. You're being manipulated. He's turning everyone against you. And yes, he's using me as a scapegoat." Her eyes filled with tears. "But Emily, it's working. I can't even tell the truth without him twisting it. Everyone is looking at me like I'm lying." I wanted to scream at the world. The injustice, the betrayal, the helplessness, I felt it all at once. But I knew yelling wouldn't help. Only a clear, sharp plan could save her sanity. And maybe even my own. As I held her hand, I noticed the small clues Ryan had left behind, text messages he hadn't deleted, screenshots of conversations, a misplaced receipt from a restaurant that didn't exist. Evidence, subtle but damning, waiting for the right moment. I realized that this wasn't just about control or spite anymore. Ryan was building a case against her, one that could isolate her completely. And in a twisted way, he had succeeded. "Emily, what if there's no way out?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. I took a deep breath. There is a way out. But we have to be smart. And we have to act before it's too late. At that moment, I understood something critical. Hannah wasn't just being hurt. She was being trapped. And if I didn't help her, the consequences could be irreversible. The storm was just beginning. The more I thought about that night, the more I realized how much had been hidden from me. It wasn't just Ryan's manipulation, it was the moments I'd missed, the tiny cracks in Hannah's defenses I had ignored. I remembered the first time I noticed her flinch when he raised his voice at a friend. And how she quickly laughed it off, pretending nothing happened. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, but then came the night she broke down completely, admitting everything she had been holding in. She told me how he had made her doubt herself, made her question every decision. And even twisted her memories to convince her she had wronged him. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Hannah had been living in a cage of lies and manipulation. And I hadn't even known. I could see now that the shove I once regretted wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a larger pattern of chaos that Ryan created. Every time he raged, every accusation he threw, it was designed to destabilize Hannah and make her rely on him. And somehow, in the middle of it all, I had become a pawn in their twisted game. I felt a mix of guilt and determination. Guilt because I hadn't been there in the moments she needed someone to validate her feelings. And determination because I refused to let this continue. There was no turning back now. Hannah and I stayed up late that night, talking about everything she had endured. She told me about the sleepless nights, the constant fear, and the shame she felt for trusting someone she shouldn't have. I listened, not interrupting, letting her words fill the spaces I had ignored for so long. "Emily, I was blind," she whispered finally. "I thought I loved him. I thought maybe he'd change. But I see now, he never was going to be different. Her confession was a turning point, a fragile bridge between despair and action. I realized that if Hannah could see the truth, if she could admit it to herself, if maybe there was a chance to finally break free. But the tension wasn't over. Ryan had a way of turning even small victories into a new set of challenges. He was unpredictable. And one wrong move could trigger another wave of chaos. I looked at Hannah and said, "This isn't easy. It's going to take time. But I promise, we'll figure this out together." She nodded, a mixture of fear and hope in her eyes. And I knew, deep down, that the next steps we took could either set her free or plunge her even deeper into his trap. Things started to unravel faster than I expected. Hannah's denial was cracking. But instead of facing reality, she projected all her frustration onto me. "Why didn't you warn me sooner?" she shouted one night, her voice shaking. "You knew how he could be." I froze, caught between anger and heartbreak. How could I make her see that I was trying to help, that I had been there every step, without pushing her further away? Her projection didn't stop at words. She questioned my motives, my loyalty, even the way I had supported her. It was as if all the times we'd been inseparable didn't exist. And in that moment, I realized how far she had fallen into Ryan's world, a world where truth and trust were twisted beyond recognition. Yet, within her fury, I saw tiny cracks. She hesitated before her next words. As if part of her still knew what was right. That hesitation gave me hope. It was fragile. But it was real. I asked gently, "Do you want to be free from him, Hannah? Do you want to see what life feels like without fear?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked away, biting her lip, tears brimming. I could see the battle raging inside her, the desire to escape and the fear of letting go. In that silence, I realized something important. I couldn't drag her out of this. She had to choose to step away. My role was to hold the door open, to guide her when she wobbled. But ultimately, she had to make the leap herself. But just as we were finding a fragile understanding, Ryan's presence loomed closer. A message from him lit up her phone. "You think you can escape? You'll regret it." Her face paled. The subtle fear that had been simmering now erupted. And I knew this was the test, whether she would stand up for herself or sink further into his control. Could she finally see the truth, or would Ryan's manipulation trap her again? And more importantly, what would I do if she hesitated too long? The tension in the room was unbearable. And the stakes had never been higher. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. It was a Friday night, and I had just finished work when Hannah called, her voice trembling. "Emily, he's here. I think he's going to hurt me." My heart pounded as I ran across the city. When I reached her apartment, I saw Ryan's shadow through the blinds, pacing like a predator. Hannah's hands were shaking, her phone slipping from her grip as she tried to film him. He wasn't just controlling anymore, he was aggressive, unpredictable. And fueled by anger. One wrong word, one hesitation. And I feared what he might do. I tried to calm her. "Stay still. Don't engage. I'm coming in." She nodded. But the panic in her eyes was unbearable. I knocked at the door. And when it opened, I could feel the tension cut through the air like a knife. Ryan's eyes narrowed. And for a moment, I wondered if he'd notice me at all. Then came the first blow, not physical, but verbal. He sneered, twisting Hannah's words, mocking her, making her doubt everything she'd just confessed. I could see her shrinking, her confidence eroding with each calculated barb. And yet, beneath that fear, there was a flicker of resistance. I could see it in the way she straightened her shoulders, how she tried to steady her voice. She wasn't ready to give up completely. The entire situation escalated in seconds. Neighbors peeked through their windows, whispers and murmurs adding to the chaos. One even called the police. But the line felt agonizingly slow, leaving us alone with him for precious minutes that stretched like hours. I grabbed Hannah's hand. We leave together. Now. And for the first time, she didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, trusting me to guide her away from the storm. But even as we moved, Ryan's shadow followed, his voice threatening from behind. In those moments, I realized that escape wasn't just physical. It was emotional, mental. And every step forward felt like crossing a battlefield. Could she truly break free? Or would Ryan's manipulation hold her captive even as we ran? The night ended with adrenaline still coursing through my veins. And a haunting thought lingering: the danger wasn't over. It was just evolving. The apartment confrontation was the most terrifying night of my life. Ryan had cornered Hannah, his anger palpable, his threats sharp and deliberate. Every word he spat felt designed to cut deeper, to make her doubt herself even more. Hannah's hands were trembling as she clutched her phone, filming him in a desperate attempt to document his behavior. I could see the terror in her eyes, but also the tiniest spark of defiance. She was scared, yes, but she wasn't giving in completely. I stepped forward, heart racing. "We're leaving. Now." For a moment, he didn't react. Then, his voice rose, dripping with menace. "You think you can just walk away? I know your secrets." My stomach twisted. Secrets? What secrets? I realized this was his power, the threat of hidden truths to paralyze her, to make her feel trapped no matter where we went. But Hannah did something I didn't expect. She stood taller, her voice shaking but firm. "You're done. We're done." It was enough to buy us a moment. I grabbed her hand. And together we made for the door. He lunged. But in that instant, the adrenaline kicked in. We pushed past him, hearts hammering, and stepped into the night. Outside, the city felt both safe and surreal. Sirens wailed in the distance, neighbors murmured from windows. And Hannah clung to me as if I were her lifeline. The danger wasn't entirely gone. But for the first time, she had taken control. I could feel her fear still. But I also felt relief. This confrontation was the culmination of months of tension, lies, and manipulation. And while we had escaped physically, the emotional scars were still raw. The night left a haunting lesson. Ryan had power, yes, but he didn't have control anymore. Hannah had finally realized that the only way to survive was to step out of his shadow. As we walked away, I couldn't help but wonder, would this be the end of his schemes? Or was there more lurking just out of sight, waiting to strike again? The morning after the confrontation, there was a quiet that felt almost unreal. Ryan was gone, at least for now. And Hannah was safe, but safety didn't erase the months of manipulation, fear, and betrayal that had brought us to this point. We spent hours talking, retracing every moment that had led here. She admitted her mistakes, her blind spots. And I admitted mine. It wasn't about blame anymore, it was about understanding, learning, and moving forward. Hannah decided to cut all contact with Ryan. She blocked him everywhere and changed routines that had kept her vulnerable. She even confided in a trusted friend about everything, finally letting someone see the full picture. But here's the twist I never saw coming. In the aftermath, I discovered that Ryan had reached out to another friend, trying to repeat the cycle of manipulation. The relief of escaping wasn't total, there was still vigilance required, a reminder that people like him never stop trying to control those they see as weak. Still, Hannah was different now. Stronger. Wiser. She'd faced the storm. And even though the scars remained, she walked with a newfound confidence. And in that moment, I realized that surviving wasn't just about avoiding danger, it was about reclaiming yourself, your choices, and your power. Looking back, I could see how every betrayal, every micro twist in our story, had led to this moment. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy. But it was ours. And sometimes, surviving the storm is the most powerful revenge of all. If this story shocked you, hit subscribe and join us for more jaw-dropping confessions. Trust me, the next story will challenge everything you